let's set up our first test. So I'm going to go over here and let's describe authentication. And what we're going to end up doing here is let's first describe one of the routes that we're going to use. So there's three routes. One route's going to log us in. It's going to end up setting a cookie that we can end up using. And the other route is going to actually get information about us as a user, something we would end up needing in our application. So we're going to describe a get route to /API sessions. And this should get the current session. But let's do an easy one here, and let's describe it when not logged in. And we would expect, if we're not logged into the application, that it returns a 401, right? That we're not authorized to see it. So if we want to do this, what we could do is we could actually make this async. And I'm going to be optimistic here, and I'm going to assume that I have something that I could end up testing, that I'm going to be able to do a get for an API sessions. And this is going to end up being my response. And I'm going to assume that if I end up looking at that response, I'm going to write an expectation that the status of that response, and in the language of Chai, to equal 401. And if I go over here and this runs, sometimes Mocha doesn't pick up on these changes. I see that app is not defined. So let's build this out a little bit. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to end up using another testing library called Supertest, and I'm going to require it, and Supertest ends up needing an application, or it needs routes that it could end up calling. Supertest will end up spinning up its own server here, but I'll get a different error here that it doesn't know what Supertest is, so let's end up installing Supertest. Again, this is going to be a dev dependency. And let's try this again. And we'll find out that it can't find the app, which is true. Let's load this. And we'll go over here and we'll end up adding our app.js. Again, Supertest Mocha doesn't always pick up on this. So still can't find app because I think that I need to go up one level. It's not in this directory. And here it's actually saying, hey, look, I see that you have a module, but this is not anything I could use for any routes. So we'll go over here and we'll bring in Express. And we'll do module.exports equals our app, actually. So our app is going to be an Express app. We'll create it, and we'll end up exporting it so we can end up using it in our test. And we can't find Express, so let's install that. That's not going to be a dev dependency. So we're going to have that in our regular dependencies. And we'll again run our test. Okay, and we'll see expect is not defined, which is true. So we'll go back over here to our spec and bring in expect, which we can destructure from Chai. And we find that we get a 404, not a 401. So let's go over here and set this up so that what we'll end up doing here, we'll do an app.get /API sessions. And we're going to assume that if we are logged in, that we're going to have a user. So we're just going to ask the question and say, hey, look, if you don't have a user on the request object here, which we won't have, what we'll end up doing here is we'll just go and specify, hey, look, if not request.user, we're going to call next, and we'll call it with an object, and we'll set the status to 401. and this will end up passing our test. This object that you're seeing here is actually, if we had some middleware that was installed, and we say app .use error request response next. This is also pretty common. We could just sort of throw this in. We might use this at some point. We could just say response dot status. Either let's use the error status, or we want to let the user know there was something that was wrong here. And we'll end up sending back, and here we could send back as JSON an error, which is going to end up being this error. And if we wanted to, we could console log it just so we see it in our development environment. And here we actually see something a little bit more, so we're seeing this error message.